We're creating about as many jobs as those other metros combined.
So Bend hates to be compared to Boulder.
We could have a whole hour conversation about this.
I think it sets us up another kind of foundation.
It's pretty forward-thinking, developments for an old busted-up sawmill town. These conversations are brought to you by the Ladd Group, Bend's leading real estate team. Help continue this Bend Beat conversation by subscribing, sharing, and leaving us a review. Well, Kirk, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
This is Kirk Schueler. He's really an institution here in town. And really, one of the people that actually had the ability to kind of move the needle on growth and shape what we have here. Kirk is the CEO of Brooks Resources. For those who aren't familiar with Brooks Resources, they're really the dominant land and community development company here in town. And, some of your other, accomplishments, you're a member of the board of the trustees for Oregon State University.
Go Beavs.
Yeah. We've got more of them here, more than ever. You were previously the chief administration officer for St. Charles Health Center.
Yeah.
So I'm just beyond grateful for you being here and sharing this time. The real theme of what we're doing here is just to have kind of an open and unfiltered discussion of what made Bend great. Bend was not founded on pessimism. It was founded by people that wanted to shape this community that we have, and just share that story, especially for a lot of the people that are moving here and aren't familiar with kind of the background of how we got here.
Right.
Well, so, before we start, tell me a little bit about your origin story and, how you found Bend. When did you know that Bend was going to be your home and where you wanted to raise your girls we were just talking about?
Good question. I found Bend in 1984, so maybe 85, when I had moved to Oregon from Utah. My wife and I are originally from Nevada. We kind of bounced around Idaho, Utah, and then we landed in Eugene. Yeah. Came over here for a ski vacation on a gorgeous spring day, and and that was 1984 when the raging recession over here was pretty tough, and so it was very quiet, and we just thought, and quaint, and we just thought, wow, this is a great place. Didn't know it existed. Yep. We were young and going to school. And then I graduated from U of O with a degree in accounting, went to work for KPMG, international accounting firm. Okay. I started in San Jose, California, and then transferred to Portland because San Jose was, we had our first kid, so my wife wasn't working, and we were going broke living in San Jose. Yeah. I think I was paying about $800 a month in rent for a 2-bedroom apartment in San Jose.
Back then, that was a lot.
That would have been 1987.
Okay.
So got to Portland, was working in Portland, and I decided to leave public accounting. I'd been there about 6.5 years, and I was getting into the selling and marketing of accounting and audit services. Yep. And I'm more of a hands-on. I liked doing audits. I liked being with my clients. And so I looked around, and the opportunity existed to come to Brooks Resources, and came down here. They were a client of my office, our office, but not my client. And that was sort of when it was like, this is great. We're doing this. At that point, we had now 3 daughters. Yep. They were 2, 4, and 6 years old when we moved here. Okay. In 1993. Okay. And so there was just that when I came down to visit to meet with Brooks Resources and Mike Holler, and my wife and I were like, this is great. This is where we're going to raise our kids and enjoy our time here. So.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you. Yeah. What did Bend look like? I mean, here we are, we're looking over, New Bend, we've got a cinema right here. We've got the old mill district that was redeveloped by Bill Smith, correct? Yeah. What did the sawmill look like? What did downtown look like?
Well, when I moved here in 93, the mill was still operating. Okay. Those smokestacks were still, I don't know if those smokestacks, I don't know if they were burning. Okay. But the mill, there's a big metal building here that was the mill. Okay. And they were still running, and you could hear the horn or whatever they sounded at break or lunch or end of shift. But that was short-lived. I think they closed in 94, maybe. Okay. I can't remember. It was, and of course that was Brooks Scanlon. Sure. Not at that time. That was had been sold to Brooks Scanlon sold the mill to Diamond International, who sold it to Crown Pacific. Okay. So I think Crown Pacific was running the mill at that time. So anyway, that's what it looked like. Yeah. It was still a bit of a mill town, which is really a big part of the origins in my mind. Still, it did and still does have an influence, I think, on a little bit of the town, sort of attitudes and hard work and sort of things like that. But other than that, when you look out, it was not as developed. There's not as many things, especially right here. There was probably just some old mill buildings and sheds and other storage buildings and things like that.
So what did Aubrey Butte and kind of those areas look like? Those really came into development about that time.
Yeah, mid '80s.
Yep.
So I got here in '93. So when I got here, I think we were on about phase 10 or something on Aubrey Butte, and it ended up being 30 something phases, 39 phases or so. Yeah, 850 house lots, and so it was not very built out. And actually in '93 there was a little bit of a recession going on, so it was a little tight, a little slow, and so it was exciting to see a home get started. We'd go up and look and see what I was doing. But then things picked up, and then it moved rather quick. Aubrey Butte moved rather quickly. And Aubrey Glen opened in '93, which was one of our projects too. So there was nothing there when I got here. There was a handful of houses, and the clubhouse wasn't even built yet.
Yeah. So, you're referencing several things. So one, you referenced Brooks Scanlon, which was the lumber company here in town, which was really Brooks Resources was birthed from that.
Yep. We were a wholly owned subsidiary formed in 1968. Okay. We just celebrated our Brooks Resources 50th year.
Okay. And did a lot of the land position that you guys have developed on, was that acquired, or were those previous timber holdings, or was it just?
Interesting enough, Brooks Resources did projects down in South County. And some of that was unproductive or low productivity forest lands. But a lot of the big projects were actually lands that were purchased. Aubrey Butte, Aubrey Glen. Yep. The back 9 of River's Edge we owned. We sold it to River's Edge. That was all part of a purchase we made from the Coates family. Mm-hmm. And then Black Butte Ranch, for instance, there was some land, but I believe they purchased most of the land there for that project. So that was a conscious effort to create a real estate development company as a subsidiary of them. A lot of the mill, a lot of lumber companies did that, and they did it to take advantage of low productivity or unproductive forest lands. Yeah, because you don't get to, when you're buying tracts of land, you don't get to pick just the high grade. Sure. Yeah. So that's what they were doing, and Brooks Scanlon did that, and created Brooks Resources.
Okay. Brian Ladd here. I hope you're enjoying the conversation and find this dialogue relevant to really what it means to live and work and play in this amazing community. As Ben's leading real estate team, we take our role seriously in representing both buyers and sellers at the absolute highest standards of our industry. For more information on how we can help, feel free to visit our website at benpropertysource.com or text LADD1, LADD1 to 88,000. What's interesting is that you have, effectively shaped much of the growth plan, especially for West Bend, right?
Especially for West Side of Bend.
Over the last 30, 40 years. Yeah. And, I'm not sure if there's many towns where, one company had the ability to kind of shape a town as much as you guys have done. Right. And is there any particular development, that rises to the top that you're most proud of, or is it just kind of been a morphing of reacting to the market? What's interesting for me though, I don't want to overstep my question, but is how forward thinking a lot of those neighborhoods are. Northwest Crossing, I have clients flying in from all over the U.S. to try to figure out what that Northwest Crossing magic is.
We tour a lot of people there.
Yeah. And it's, it's pretty forward thinking, developments for an old busted up sawmill town, right?
It's interesting you say that, because I like to think that Brooks has always been in a position to sort of, not necessarily test the market, but test ideas and put it out there. Because so Aubrey Butte, for instance, let's take it. Aubrey Butte at the time was a large lot development in a recessionary time, large lot development with high architectural standards, like no fencing. It was really a different feel and look than what things have been, what had been done in the city at the time. So it was sort of out on a limb, but there was a vision for it, right? And Aubrey Glen was sort of a somewhat predictable, but very nice, golf course community. And Broken Top opened the same year. Okay. So before that, the private golf was just Bend Golf and Country Club, basically. Okay. I think Widgie was private for a little while. Okay. But basically. those were two big golf courses to
Yeah,
come into. But so then came Northwest Crossing, and we did a couple other things. We did Shevlin Riverfront, which was sort of new, and we rearranged buildings differently, and sold the riverfront to the park so that they could have that park.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
we owned all that, and where the parking lot is, that was all it was all part of Shevlin Center, which is where the Shevlin Hickson mill was, that Brooks Scanlon owned.
Sure.
So we sort of started into that world of a little different sort of development pattern with Shevlin Riverfront. Offices out to the street, front doors, parking behind, on-street parking. Tried to create open spaces, wanted to fill the street with some massive buildings so that you felt like you were in a little different, it wasn't suburbia, basically. And that led really to the discussions about Northwest Crossing and what it would be. And we partnered with Mike Tennant and his team. And Mike had been dabbling in that because he built West Bend Village, which is west of 14th Street. It's actually west of 15th Street. Davenport, Elgin, Fresno, right in there. And Mike, a funny story, Mike would always say, I didn't know anything about what new urbanism was, but he kind of grew up in that neighborhood in Portland, and he knew he wanted porches and alleys, and that's what his memories were. And so we sort of connected in a weird way. I won't go into that story, but we were both talking to Mr. Miller, Bill Miller at the time. And Mr. Miller.
Is that father of Charlie?
It is. And Harry and Connie. And, the whole crew. And Mr. Miller said, look, I like both you guys. You come back to me. And so we were kind of not shotgun marriage, but we were like put together to buy that land. But luckily, what a wonderful partnership with Mike and his team. And that's when these visions came together about like, what is neighborhood? What are we doing? And then this new urbanism was coming out of the ground, if you will, and nationally. And we went to conferences we had no right of being at times back. We're like in these small group conferences of like 40 of the leaders of new urbanism. We're sitting here going like, hi, we're just these people who bought some land in Bend.
Well, I would beg to differ. I mean, I think to pull off what you did with Northwest Crossing, I mean, the sustainability of that, even through the recession, was impressive.
Well, we were going to those before we had even turned over one spade of dirt.
Oh, okay.
So we were going like just trying to learn about it, and then hear all these. We're sitting with Peter Calthorpe and Andres Duani and all these big names in new urbanism. And we're watching.
But so I mean, you were going out on a limb. I mean, here at the time, Northwest Crossing, you're thinking about it. It is what, about 60, 70,000 people? I mean, maybe a little
Bend?
more. Yeah.
Let's see. It was 2001.
So maybe a little bit more than that.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah,
but I mean, still for the setting that Bend was, with the amount of land that we still had to do 5,000 square foot lots with front porches with alley loads, was radically different than anything we've
Especially
seen.
when you think we were coming from Aubrey Butte, Aubrey Glen.
Yeah, I mean, your most of your
North
stuff on the
Rim.
Butte is what, an acre?
Yeah, most of the stuff on the Butte is.
I mean, did you do any market studies, or did you just? I mean, was it a little bit of a gut feel, or
There's a lot of bit of gut feel.
Okay.
The best part was this: is we had a brokerage office, a pretty well staffed brokerage office. I mean, we must have had a dozen or 18 brokers. I think more than half of them thought we were just like crazy. That'll never sell. Yeah, that's crazy.
No one wants a 5,000 square foot lot.
Nobody wants an alley. Nobody wants a 5,000 square foot lot. And so I don't know, honestly, I can't recall how we got over their objections and over our own concerns, economic concerns of it. But it was just a commitment to a vision. Yeah, is all it was, and that's it.
Well, it's interesting.
There was no special research done. I mean, we had a market. We had a guy help us. Sure. But some economic analysis guy. And they came back and said, "Oh yeah, you should be able to sell these lots."
Yeah,
great. We'll do it.
Well, and I think there's so much in that dynamic. I think you're not giving it enough credit, but from your Guild of Builders and how you rolled out and how you promote diversity in architecture. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things that brought that together. I mean, because if you would have had a production builder go in there with 4 different plans with different elevations, it would have been a very different scene. I mean, let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, where did the Guild of Builders come from, and how did that affect the outcome of what it is today?
Well, as part of that vision, we talked a lot about not wanting to have exactly that, the merchant builder sort of build
Sure.
4 different floor plans. And it was all about, because what we wanted was an authentic look to the neighborhood. And the only thing we could come up with is, well, obviously we need somebody to build 40, 50, 60 homes a year.
Yep.
And so if we're not going to do it with one, we better do it with a bunch.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it was really, we just sort of thought through what made sense about how to do this. And literally our rules were in the beginning, especially, a builder was not allowed to buy consecutive lots in a row.
Okay.
Yeah. You couldn't buy 4 lots in a row so that you could just build 4 homes at a time. No, you owned,
A patchwork.
a patchwork of lots. And that was all to mix it up. And the other thing we had was a buyback provision, because we were very concerned about what we called missing teeth in the neighborhood, meaning somebody doesn't build on their lot, and so
want to close that
construction goes on for 5 years. So people who moved in there are going, I don't really like this.
Okay, yeah.
And so, not that we ever bought any lots back, but
you had the right.
But we had the right, and the builders knew it. And plus, if they weren't building, they weren't going to be in the guild.
Yep.
So, if you're not going to build, there's somebody else who would take your spot.
Yep.
And so that really just helped the whole thing. The phases were getting built out all at once. There was a lot of diversity. The builders were diverse. The styles were diverse. I shouldn't say they were necessarily diverse, because a lot of people were building craftsman style homes at that time.
Yeah, those first phases are
It
pretty
was
craftsman
heavy.
oriented.
And look
right?
how it's shifted now. Now it's
everything's
this
modern, right?
mid-century modern now.
Yeah.
And so it's funny to see it over the years, because it's 19 years ago. And so it's funny to see, because that was the rage, was the craftsman home, the bungalow type home.
Yeah.
But different builders, you could, I can go out there and tell you, well, that's, a John Howcroft home, and that's a somebody else's home, or a craftsman home.
Yeah.
That was one of the companies that Mike actually owned.
Okay.
But so that was it. We just wanted it to be diverse. We didn't want it to look like just a standard subdivision. We put a lot of effort into preserving trees.
Yep.
If you go out there, and sometimes you'll see where we put the curb around, or the sidewalk around to save a tree in the planter strip. There's even places you can see where there's a wow in the curb, but there's no tree. Well, the tree died.
Yeah.
And then we didn't go back and fix the curb. We just have a strange curb.
Well, yeah. So I've had 2 houses in Northwest Crossing, both of which we jogged around some of those big old trees.
Yeah,
And
right.
But what's amazing is what that created is, day one I moved into my house, and it's instant established neighborhood. When you walk down those streets, you're scratching your head. Is this a 50-year-old neighborhood or a 5-year-old neighborhood?
It's crazy to me. It's crazy to think about the significance of those trees.
Yeah.
What it did.
So that was all second growth, right? I mean, that was all cut about 50 years ago?
I don't know. Charlie would know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But and of course there was some mining activity that was going on there too, where Discovery Park is.
I didn't know that.
And Summit High. They were doing, Mr. Miller was doing, we don't call Charlie Mr. Miller, but we call Bill Miller Mr. Miller.
Okay.
The Mr. Miller was doing pumice mining, and Central Oregon Pumice, I think, was the name of his company.
Okay.
So not everything was covered with trees, and you can see it in the Discovery Park area of the neighborhood now, where
the pond is.
Yes, and you can see all those new homes in there, and it looks so different.
Yeah.
Now it'll look great as the street trees grow.
Yep.
And people's landscapes grow. And so the only difference was the timing. The pine trees created instant sort of authenticity. It made it like, oh yeah, look at this neighborhood, look at this architecture, this historic architecture, and these trees. I'm living in a place that was built 50 years ago. Well, no, just 10 or 5.
And it just happens to be, Earth Advantage, and I mean, to speak to that, I mean,
we did that too.
Some of the things that you did, namely that you require all the homes to be Earth Advantage certified.
Right.
I mean, you had to be one of the first communities in the West to go to that level.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know. Certainly, it was unique. And again, our realtors questioned our logic.
And then I'm sure the builders did too, because what they're going to say is,
did.
hey, we can achieve this same standard without having to pay for the certification or whatnot. But it's been interesting to see, because you've now trained this crop of builders to build at, Earth Advantage standards.
Right.
And it's an incredible talent pool.
Yeah. Well, we always it's like LEED too, like LEED
Sure.
construction.
Yeah.
We always said, when will that just become the standard for building and not this certification or not this level? And so that was sort of an alternative motive to hopefully that would happen someday.
Yeah.
What's funny about the Earth Advantage is what we learned from our brokers early on in that process was buyers didn't necessarily come in. They would say, "Oh, this is a 3-bedroom house, 1,680 square feet, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, blah blah blah," and they'd say, "And it's Earth Advantage," and they'd be, "Oh, that's great, that's great. What are the countertops?
Yeah,
are these granite?
Sure.
Oh, this is lovely." And it's like, yeah, and it's Earth Advantage. Oh, okay. And finally, after a little, okay, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
Yeah, and then they would sort of get the buyer would take a moment to think about that and go, "Oh, I get it. So my energy bills should be a little bit lower.
Yeah.
My house should be a little bit warmer.
Air quality's better.
Air quality's better.
Yeah.
These
kids are going to be healthier.
These little things that you don't see, like a countertop or the flooring."
Yeah.
Or, so so in the end, not in the end, it's still going, but it never seems to be a primary driver.
Sure.
But it certainly helps close, somebody's idea about, hey, we should buy this house. It's really nice. I like the countertops.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, it's all these environmental things are nice about it.
Well, and you can feel the difference.
Yes.
And these are all those homes are blower door tested for air exchange and infiltration and all that. And you can tell the difference of a Northwest Crossing home and a home that's not.
Right.
And it's, so I've heard about all these different things you've done regarding the development. They wouldn't have all necessarily had a trajectory to pencil to the bottom line of your development, of how you're doing it. I mean, but it seems to have worked, making your whole neighborhood Earth Advantage and requiring that of the builders. I'm sure you got some pushback there on construction costs and profit margins and all that, but you had the most sustainable, thriving development in the whole Northwest during the recession. I owned a home in 2009 in Northwest Crossing, and I turned around and resold that. I mean, that was in the teeth of the gale.
There was nothing, the only thing was selling was Northwest Crossing.
Only thing was selling.
We were still selling 40 homes a year.
Yeah. I mean, and there was a time where housing prices in some parts of Bend went down 55%.
Yeah,
those highly speculative, kind of more commodity neighborhoods with big land positions out in front of them and, just kind of basic construction. And those prices were going down 50 and Northwest Crossing saw a little bit of a dip. But maybe 10%.
Yeah.
And time to sell went from one month to 3 months or something like that, but it continued to sell.
It makes it sound like we really had it all planned, but literally and I think back about it, it's really a commitment to vision. We had a pro forma and it said this is what was going to happen, and some of it came true and some of it did worse, some of it did better. But in the long run, it was really a commitment to a vision of what. There's no monument signs in Northwest Crossing. Do you know why?
No.
Because we didn't want it to be. We wanted it to be an extension of Bend, not an island.
Okay.
We didn't want it to be this.
Yeah.
We didn't want it to be this thing that then you can go out here. We wanted you to be able to. We wanted people to drive in on a street and go, where are we? This is what neighborhood is this?
Sure.
What is this?
Okay.
And
I never made that connection.
Yet they knew it was different, right?
Yep.
It was newer,
sure.
obviously. So, but they knew something was different, and they're like, where are we?
Yep.
And there wasn't a monument saying like, you have arrived,
Yeah.
you're in Northwest Crossing, be grateful. It's like, no, we're part of Bend.
Yep.
And we're just an extension of what's good in Bend.
Yep.
And so it was a lot of discussion about just vision of what we wanted to convey in the subdivision.
I think what you're talking about, a commitment to a vision, really plays into what Bend is, right? There's a vision about this town.
I agree.
And what's that intangible that makes Bend so unique and different from all these other, Western cities, from a Bozeman to a Boise, that have developed in a very different fashion. I was just in Boise a couple weeks ago, and they do have some more affordable housing, granted, but it's endless subdivisions stamped out in 40-acre grids. You can see the remnants of the old farming, and at every corner there's a stoplight backed up in all directions. And for you to cross 5 miles through all these new cities of Meridian and Eagle and whatnot to get into Boise, you're going 5 miles an hour, and here you are in the big West looking at all these beautiful mountains, and you're in this poorly planned neighborhood or extension that lacks trail connectivity and all these things. And it's I guess land planning is a big part of it, but what makes Bend so different, and, why do things like Northwest Crossing work here?
It's an interesting question, and not to throw Boise under the bus, but
Sure.
there are issues there,
Sure.
but
Right.
and it's a great place. It's growing fast,
Yep.
But you said planning, and planning is a big part of it. And I'd go back to even Oregon land use laws,
Yeah.
and there's something to that. I mean, we believe in Oregon land use laws. We believe in the UGB. Can the process be better? You bet.
Sure.
There's room for improvement in my mind to help take some cost out of this process for the city, for me as a taxpayer.
Yeah.
But the product of
Yep.
it is that we have to plan a little. I think we put a lot of effort into planning, basically.
Yep.
I think the city does, and I think as developers they do. Look what Bill Smith did. He put a lot of planning into what the old mill became.
Yep.
And so it's sort of that combination of us as developers, as a community, right? Trying to do the best we can in our planning efforts. The city with its comprehensive plan policies and their goals, and us having to follow those and not fight them, if you will.
Yep.
That's helpful, right? Because then long-term vision can occur.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. The Newport and Galveston corridors and the Century Drive corridors. Years ago, we helped with a study that a group called Friends of Bend sort of sponsored. They looked at those corridors, and the response from the neighbors, it was very neighbor-driven, was like, I want those corridors to remain as they are. I don't want them to become 5 lanes of traffic because I'll put up with going slow down this corridor to have this physical environment.
Yep.
And so that to me was people who understood
Yep.
how important the physical environment was. I heard this said a long time ago. When people travel, they'll go to places that are old, or they'll go to places that are unique,
Sure.
right? Like Boston or Charleston, or into Europe. You go to these, we gravitate toward these wonderful older towns, and I just got back from Spain, so I can tell you, we did. And in the long run, there's not a lot different other than just the physical structure of the place. I mean, there's still restaurants.
Yeah.
The food's different.
Yeah.
People speak a different language, and the cultures are different. But a big piece of it is just the built environment is so committed to, right? They don't have. I grew up in Las Vegas, so that's the comparison I use. We are exactly like we were. I don't live there. I haven't lived there a long time, but that was drive out into the desert and develop 100 acres. For nothing.
With big box stores every quarter mile.
That you could count off your odometer on your car when the next Albertsons was going to be there, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, look, the Albertsons. Okay, in a half mile there will be another super center. And so it lacks creativity in my mind, but I just think that Bend is the way it is because it started as a mill town. It had these good bones in it, as far as infrastructure and streets.
Yep.
I'm not saying it had fabulous. It just had good bones. It had good structure.
Yep.
And that, and Brooks was part of it. So our influence sort of carried over. Like, well, that's how it's supposed to be in Bend. Our chairman Mike Holleran has lived here since the mid to late '60s. And so that just helped us set the vision.
Yeah.
And Bill Smith was part of Brooks Resources back in the.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was president of Brooks Resources in the late '70s and early '80s.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, so we influenced him a little bit, or he influenced Brooks. It goes both ways.
Okay.
But so I just think we were lucky enough to have people with vision on what they were doing.
Yep.
I think this state planning rules and this comprehensive plan the city had, or today's comprehensive plan focuses on complete neighborhoods, for instance, and to me that's important because as you get into this discussion, like how does Bend maintain its feel? I think complete communities is going to be one of the factors that that helps the city do that.
Okay.
And so let's use Northwest Crossing as an example. no community is 100% complete, obviously, right? Not everybody gets a Costco in their neighborhood.
Yep.
And so people like to go to Costco. So yes, those trips will occur.
Yep.
Or the movie theater, right? It's not going to be in every neighborhood, but there are lots of things that can be in your neighborhood that allow you to have a quality of life within a certain radius of where you live.
Sure.
And then you're going to leave that radius for lots of things, but you serve a lot of.
But the majority of
Yeah,
your
a lot
daily
of-
travel.
or just your recreation, the services and goods you might seek on a daily basis.
Yep.
The schools or public buildings you might
Yep.
need, and we can do better on that. But we're not that big a town yet, where we have libraries everywhere.
Yeah.
But so I think that city's commitment to that will help.
Yep.
And so, for instance, out on 15th, where they're building a new high school out there,
Yep.
the city's recent comp plan update they did with the UGB designated a bunch of different zoning out there at that intersection on the ward's land.
Okay.
And so the good news was it wasn't going to be just all residential.
Yeah.
There would be other uses near the high school probably and, across the street.
Yep.
And then that neighborhood would be able to access that. And so that's the sort of planning that will help our neighborhoods feel livable still. And,
Well, yeah.
and again, I grew up in Las Vegas. I know what it feels like to drive for miles going, okay, there's, I have to drive a long way to get to something, or there's nothing in my neighborhood. So,
Well, I mean, so many people move to Bend, and one of the reasons, in Northwest Crossing, we're kind of staying on track there, but it is so attractive is that the thought where someone can walk to the wine bar and also their kids can walk to school and they can go to the bakery and they can pick up some goods at the corner market. And then, especially with all the new development that is being done in that area with working, all the,
Right.
the light
There's a lot of-
industrial
right.
and all the co-working spaces
Yeah.
and all that. I mean, most of your life can be pretty self-contained and you can live days without touching your car. And,
Yeah.
to be out in Oregon, which is one of the lowest density populated states in the nation, to have kind of car-free living as an option is pretty interesting.
yeah, again, some long-term sort of state goals and things like that.
Yeah.
Reducing by vehicles miles traveled,
Yeah.
that's a VMT. It's, these are statewide goals, and
Yeah.
that's what starts to happen. I mean, you have multifamily being built in Bend now at a rate that just hadn't been built in a long time. And that's a factor of several things. One, an undersupply of multifamily,
Yep.
but also basically the land planning that is allowing it to happen. Like near the university,
Yep.
There's a building going up on Chandler that's in a commercial zone, but they're able to do it under the commercial CL zoning that's
Okay.
there that allows residential to be above, some sort of commercial use.
Yeah.
And so that's good.
Yeah.
Because we need some multifamily housing to help take some of the pressure off of the entry level housing.
Yeah.
So
Well, we kind of passed over, and I don't want to. We could have a whole hour conversation about this, but you referenced the urban growth boundary, the UGB. You also referenced the land use laws from the state. I think those are incredibly important. Obviously, I'm in agreement with how they've developed, Bend and Oregon in general. Just to refresh our memory, the land use laws were put in place by the state government in the 1970s, right?
yeah, early 70s, Governor Tom McCall.
Okay, and there's a set of criteria. What is it? 7 criteria or something that
gosh.
each city has to meet to expand their urban growth boundary, and they have to meet everything from connectivity to jobs to environment.
They have goals. Yeah, they have
the
planning
goals, yeah.
goals. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I don't know them all.
Okay.
But yes, they cover a variety of transportation, environment, economic, natural hazards, and they just
Yeah.
have all these. They have these goals,
Yep.
and that helps form each city. Each city then looks at those goals and
Yeah.
develops a comprehensive plan,
Yeah.
and then tells the state, this is how we've met your goals.
Yeah.
And the state says, well, you've done a good job.
Yeah.
Here's your stamp. You can now proceed.
Well, and they're not easy with that stamp.
No.
The
I made it
last,
sound a little easy, didn't I?
the last urban growth boundary expansion took 15 years? I mean,
they started 2008. So the current UGB that's in place is for the 20-year planning period, July 1, 2008 through June 30, 2028.
Okay.
So they attempted to expand the UGB back in 2008.
Okay.
And that got remanded by the state and said, you missed by a mile.
Yeah.
Because I think they had like 8,000 acres in it in the
Okay.
expansion. And again, and then so they tried again,
Yeah.
and then it was adopted and approved by the state
Yeah.
in December of 2016.
Yeah.
So you can see we're almost halfway through that planning period.
Okay.
And right now we're closing in on halfway through that planning period.
Yeah.
Actually over halfway.
Yeah.
And so while that didn't exactly go as planned, the first expansion and the middle of the planning period and all that, it's done. And
Yep.
we expanded and we created some land to grow onto. And now efforts are, we're going to be the first ones to deliver a home in the expansion area west of Summit High.
In the new phases of Northwest Crossing.
Yeah, the project's going to
Yeah.
be called Discovery West.
Discovery West.
Yeah. And it's modeled after Northwest Crossing, although it'll have some differences.
Okay.
But that, just think about how long that takes. Those houses won't be available for someone to buy until probably next summer, late summer. So
Okay.
that's mid to late 2020.
Yeah.
The UGB was expanded in December of 16.
Wow.
That's how long.
Sure
And
it is.
believe me, we are good at it.
Yeah.
And we hurried.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were trying to go as fast as we could, but the process just takes a long time to get from that point to the point where you're selling a home to somebody.
Yeah. So, I mean, and anytime you
And
have
again,
that
we
much,
did a master plan community. So
Sure.
maybe if you had a 5-acre piece,
Higher
it'd be,
standard.
yeah. Well, it's just there's more things going on, offsite improvements and all these things that you
Okay.
have to figure out. But because we had a large track, we moved forward quickly.
Yeah.
So-
Okay. So let's talk about that collaboration real quickly between kind of private and public. And I think, when
Yeah.
I try to focus in on what makes Ben so special, it is that collaborative nature. I was just speaking with Jim Shell and he was talking about that. And he said he went to Boulder, Colorado to try to figure out what's happening with their entrepreneur ecosystem, kind of more business oriented.
Right.
And he said, it was church and state. The government did not want to talk to the business environment and developers did not want, and they kind of just worked in their own world with blinders on, and they put up with each other. It seems, that we have a different environment here. As onerous as it may be to put up with these land planning laws, and especially in your world, it seems like the end result works, right? I mean, and the city government is open to input of development companies like Brooks.
And the community development department at the city is, in our opinion, doing well.
Okay.
They're working hard. They take that attitude of trying to work with landowners.
Yep.
That's how I'll use the term landowners. And
Yep.
anybody may want to do something on their property.
Yeah.
And I think they have their rules, and there's times we butt up against those rules. And what we do as developers is then figure out, well, what's the alternative? How do we deliver on our vision within their rules, which sometimes we disagree with,
Yep.
but that's their standard, and that's their job to enforce those. There's a reason for the standard, right?
Sure.
And so I think they're doing a good job.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the community development department and it has been open and cooperative, and they whether they're short staffed at times or not, it's the delay is the one that gets at you sometimes.
Sure.
But some of that delay isn't their fault, so
Yeah.
it's just the process. With regards to what we did on the expansion lands on the west side, there were 4 landowners on the west side that had land come in. There was us, which our companies, the LLC game. We have a company called NWX2,
Okay.
stands for Northwest Crossing 2 LLC, and that's owned by half by Brooks and half by a company called 10 White Shoes LLC.
Okay.
And so those 2 companies own Northwest Crossing 2. Or Discovery West.
Yeah.
So there's that. There was Rio Lobo, which
Yep.
was Matt Day.
Yep.
There was Dave Swisher's land, Anderson Ranch LLC,
Yep.
I think is his.
He had a
And then
few.
there was the Coates land.
Okay.
And so we all got together and came to the city and said, let's do our traffic studies as a group, and figure out what intersections need improvements and what offsite, what sewer issues exist, what water issues exist. So that's what you study. And so we took a year to do a development agreement for all those parties with the
Yep.
city. And so that was a big step.
That takes a lot of work.
And then
Yeah.
we applied for our master plan, because you needed that in place to apply for your master plan.
Yeah. If you had not forced that collaboration, it would have been a long time coming.
And the
pulling
city
that
asked
together.
us to. The city
Okay.
said, "Hey, would you guys consider trying to corral everybody?" And they said that to everybody. They just
Yeah.
didn't say it to us. Would you guys all corral together and do this? And we got together and said, "Okay, this makes sense. We can share cost of doing all that." but also we kind of solve or address.
Yep.
Some people would say not solve, but we address the issues of those in that infrastructure.
Yeah.
As a group,
Okay.
and it gets solved, and it's done.
Okay.
So now you can move forward
Yeah.
and know what your offsite needs are, what you have to pay for, when you have to pay for it.
Okay.
And we funded a big stretch of the four of us funded a stretch of the 14th Street reconstruction that was done. The city had sort of exhausted their resources.
That far away.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, and then we're building a roundabout we'll be building a roundabout at Skyliner and Skyline Ranch Road.
Okay.
There by the middle school
Sure.
and the church.
And that's eventually going to punch up all the way through.
Skyline Ranch Road will go through Discovery West, through Rio Lobo's land, and come into Shevlin Meadows,
Yep.
where Skyline Ranch Road already exists. It's that stretch that has a
Right
center
next
median.
to the Swisher property you referenced.
Yeah, you go. That goes
Yep.
right through Anderson
Yep.
Ranch,
Yep.
and then there'll be a roundabout at Shevlin Park Road and Skyline Ranch Road.
Oh, okay.
And that'll push a little north for sight distance. It'll just move off of the right-of-way to the north into Coates's land to make it a better alignment. But-
Okay.
So those are big changes. And
Yeah.
then, of course, Skyline Ranch Road will continue north into Coates's land when they develop that.
So that'll be kind of the second Collector Street west,
Yeah.
past Washington.
Yeah.
You've
It's
got
sort of-
14th Washington and
Yep.
then Skyline, right?
Exactly. And so then there were sewer improvements done
Yeah.
also to pump stations primarily,
Okay.
enlarging them.
So a
or
fair
improving
amount of offsites. I mean, and,
Oh, yeah.
and you guys have the capacity to do that all at once, right? Or
Well, it's staged.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
the sewer stuff's all paid for, but some of the improvements are coming with development because you make the improvement when you start impacting it.
okay.
So-
and your vision for this new development is what, about a 10-year vision?
Yeah, we expect it to take 10 years for our project, Discovery West. It's 650 households, but that's and there's one phase of Northwest Crossing above the park there,
Yep.
that little bluff that'll be
Yep.
part of it, and it's like 29 lots. So really, we're about 477 single-family detached homes,
Yep.
142 multifamily units, and 60 attached single-family, which are townhomes. Cottages, even though they're not attached, it's a density
Yep.
thing. And the multifamily can be apartments or condos.
Yep.
And so it'll take 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're thinking.
So let's quickly address probably the elephant that's starting to enter the room of
Right.
someone that's newer to Bend and saying, "Hey, Bend's already crowded. We don't need any more of
Right.
this." I came to Bend because it looked like this. I don't want it to change. This type of development's going to add traffic. I'll never be able to get through my roundabout, and I'm going to be backed up 3 or 4 cars at the roundabout, and I'm used to flying straight through.
10 or 11 cars.
or 10 or 11 cars. So how do we address that? I mean, what do you see as the future of Bend? What is West Bend going to look like in 25 years, and how do we collaborate to try to help kind of mitigate some of these issues that are going to come up? I mean, obviously we can't have a pro-growth town. That's who we are from city government on down without these challenges, and every town's got them, right?
Right. We're not unique.
We're not unique. So, we can bitch and moan all we want, but every town that has positive growth and job opportunity and great places to raise their family are dealing with these things. But what do you see in kind of that short term, 25-year vision of Bend, and how we solve some of these problems that are a byproduct of these type of developments?
Right. Unfortunately, I don't know anyone who knows exactly the answers to address them. There's a couple different camps though, right?
Yeah.
There's let's widen all the streets
Yep.
and put in, traffic control systems that, allow that traffic to flow.
Yep.
The other camp, the other extreme is, nope, we're going to leave it like it is and we'll just live with congestion and people will seek alternative modes of transportation and, make the other decisions, right?
Yeah, because who knows what the future is going to bring for transportation.
Right. There's that too.
Yeah.
There's this issue of technology and the futurists who see big changes in that.
Yeah.
And I can tell you a quick little story that's kind of interesting. The Shevlin Hickson, the Scanlon family reached out to us a while back and said, they got into real estate in Texas and they were building parking garages.
Yeah.
And they reached out to Mike Holler and they were coming to town and Mike was talking to them and they go, "Oh, they're selling all their parking garages in Houston." It's like, why are you selling your parking garages? Because they'll be obsolete.
Really?
That these are people who have big money invested in parking garages. Now they're one of many, but they're selling their parking garages.
So they think the future is
They-
ride share, alternative
they
transportation,
don't-
scooters, whatever the heck. Yeah.
Apparently, we're not going to need to park our cars, but thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
But that's people putting money on it, right?
Sure.
So, but I don't know. I mean, I think the key, like I said, is that we continue to develop with complete neighborhoods and with
yeah.
connectivity
Sure.
that we can, and not necessarily focus so much on how many trips get through an intersection in a 5-minute span.
Okay.
And so I know that like I said, there's two camps. So one
Yeah.
camp is hearing that going like, no, that's
Yeah.
not what I want. I want something different. I want it where there was only, when I moved here, there was 27,000 people in Bend. And then they annexed the southeast. It added about 9,000. So really we were about 36,000 people when I moved here. And it's, the traffic is, I have to wait more through traffic, but it doesn't bother me.
Sure.
So that's all I can say. I can't say for anybody else.
Yeah.
Because I came out of San Jose and Portland,
Yeah.
and even back then, gosh, I had commutes in San Jose that started in the parking lot of my apartment complex, meaning I had to wait in line to get out of my parking complex to get onto the backed up street. So
Man.
that wasn't very fun, but
No.
this doesn't seem,
Yeah.
I don't see us getting to that point. You
Yeah.
know, that's the Bay Area. So,
Yeah.
So I guess what I see is communities and connectivity, communities being developed that serve the neighbors and with connectivity through roads. Clearly, there's going to be more options, whether it be just what we see now as transit or some other form of travel.
Yep.
I think there will be changes in that. Already, we see what rideshare has done some. You can see the effects of the Ubers and the Lyfts and people using those. My wife drives Uber and Lyft. And so, she takes people all over the place. And it's always amazing to hear these stories. And it's just amazing for me to hear her stories about it because it's the diversity of people using that system is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
People who have cars do
Yeah.
it. They just don't want to drive downtown.
Yeah.
They went Christmas shopping and they want someone to pick them up and take them. It's just, I was like, really? I hadn't thought of it that way, but it makes sense for some. But so I don't know. I guess there's this, I've heard this thing. There's some people are sort of, believe that technology will fix the future, and others think, oh no, we have to, change what we're doing and stop doing something. Sort of like a little more pessimist and a little more optimist. And I find myself sometimes, not that technology itself will, but the good planning, the changes that are coming in transportation, a little bit of patience.
Yeah,
I think
patience.
I think it will work. And you think about when I moved here in Bend, is a smaller town. People took things easy and slower, I think. Yeah. And now people they expect more and they want things to happen quicker. And that's where impatience comes in. And to me, if I had one word of advice, it's literally just take a breath, slow down, look out your window and realize where you live and go, it's not the end of the world. Yeah. I'm gonna be okay today. It's just because some guy cut in front of me. My office is right at Franklin and Lava. Sure. And the only time I hear horns honk really is when some guy that's desperate to get across Franklin or turn onto Franklin because it's busy time pulls in front of somebody. Yeah. And the guy behind him goes, honk, you pulled in front of me.
It's still shocking to hear a honk in Bend.
And they honk because someone pulled in front of them. Yeah. And I think, okay, your life did not change materially enough to do that. You could have just the guy needed in. Maybe he needed to go somewhere. Maybe he was late.
We have it pretty good. So we're talking about a honk. Yeah. I just got back. I spent a couple days in New York and I was in the Marriott right on Times Square. And it's this cacophony of just chaos and noise and honks. And when I landed back down here in Bend the other day, I mean, it was pretty special.
We visited our daughter lives in Chicago. Our youngest daughter does, and with her husband, and we went into downtown, and that was my wife and I, Rochelle, were walking around going like, "Oh, I can't." It's just like you said, people honking at anything and everything. Yeah, I think if a bird got in their way, they were going to honk at it.
Well, we have it pretty good here. I mean,
I can't complain. I mean, you can, but it's not worth it.
Well, I think we would be ungrateful to complain about what we've got here. We've got it great. You know, I'm just incredibly fortunate to be able to raise my children here.
Exactly.
You know, your wife Rochelle is a track coach for my kids, and you were just telling me before we started this about your daughter's ski racing and whatnot here, and it's just a incredible place to, you know, not only raise your kids, but to have the opportunity to make big changes on a city like what you're doing here. I mean, it's so often you can find these, you know, quaint small towns. I moved here from Steamboat, and Steamboat's an incredible place,
Right.
but a very different vision. You weren't a citizen or a local there unless you had lived there 3 or 4 generations. You know, it wasn't measured in years, and the fact that, you know, it's so pro growth here in the sense that it welcomes everybody from wherever they come from. You know, Bend didn't owe any of us anything when we moved here, but yet it made space for all of us. And I think that's just something that, you know, I'm going to try to, you know, instill in our clients that move here and remind myself that it made space for us. It made opportunity for us. We've got to continue to keep that philosophy going forward.
You know, I have a little saying that I use in certain circumstances. I say it to myself, which is, and I'm gonna say it out loud now, which is silly.
I'd love to hear it.
But you know, when I hear someone say, you know, this Bend is being ruined by all this, it's not as, I don't like it anymore, something like that. I think about, you know, not for that guy who just bought his house.
Sure.
The guy who just bought his house thinks this is the best place in the world, guy or gal.
Yeah.
You know, the person who just closed on their house and is moving here from wherever, they're going, I'm doing this because this place is amazing.
Yeah.
And so I try to reconcile that. The one person is like, this is no longer what I wanted, and it's just terrible. It's like, okay, you have your opinion, but here's somebody who would vote 180 degrees from you. He just did with his money.
Yeah.
You know, that family just bought this house and they're doing this. I just talked to a couple that came from Florida with their kids. They just moved here.
And you see it in their eyes. I mean, they're absolutely elated.
They are excited to be here. They can't wait. They're, you know, so it's perspective is important.
Yeah.
You know,
perspective and patience.
yeah. I think those are probably the two main traits of a good Bendite, if you will.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time. I'm really grateful for you sharing, you know, your history and vision for Bend with me.
Yeah.
And, you know, I look forward to, you know, can keep this conversation going. And, you know, I guess I'll just leave it with, you know, do you have one person, I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there, you know, you've mentioned Mike Holleran quite a bit. I think we need to have Mike in here.
He'd be fun.
He would be fun. Is there any other person that, you know, that should help tell this, you know, optimistic story of what Bend is?
You know, that's a great question. I think when I think about that, I've made friends with people that were basically born and raised here.
Okay.
You know, the Todd Taylors, the Charlie Millers, and we talk about some of this stuff, and they will tell you what it was like and what it's. They have a different perspective. I mean, Charlie was born here, you know, and raised here, and by the way, I think he might be. Well, I know his grandfather was living here and working here, so, you know, with the lumber yard. So, you know, that perspective, people that have been here a long time, Troy Reinhardt, Scott Steele, there's Peter Carlson. These are people that all, whether they were born here or not, they certainly were going to school here as young people and in high school, and they saw a lot of change. And they have and I don't think, and all those people I named, I think most of them they're still here.
Yeah.
They still like it. You know, they still call it home. They didn't give up and say, I don't like this. People did, you know, I mean, there's old timers who said, you know, I'm done with this. I'm moving to Prineville, or I'm moving somewhere that's smaller and quieter.
Yep.
That's the beauty of all this, right? You can choose. It's so hard. Again, I grew up in Las Vegas. Guess what? Fastest growing town. When I was a kid there, just year after year, fastest growing city in the United States. And I say this, and I don't say it to be self-serving. Growth is somewhat inevitable.
Yep.
If you live in a place that people want to be. So so how do you solve that formula? You know, I don't want it to grow, but people really want to be here. Okay, that doesn't square very well.
Yeah.
You know, and not to pick on some other town, but you know, some towns in Oregon aren't growing, and it's because they haven't found that attractive reason to be there.
Well, and life's tough.
and life might be tough there too.
I mean,
right?
it's
Jobs might be
Yeah.
thin there, but Bend has a lot going on for it, and that attracts people. So,
Well, I'll leave it at that. I think that's the perfect ending of the conversation, and I really appreciate your time.
yeah.
Thanks, Kirk.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. This is the Ben Beat, and until next time.